Jathic stood in the grand chamber of the Galactic Council, his forearms clasped behind his back in the formal stance of his people. The Viridian had served as a military observer for nearly 20 cycles, watching dozens of species fight their small wars across the galaxy. He thought he had seen everything. He was wrong. The council leader, a massive creature covered in scales, looked down at him from the floating platform. "Observer Jathic, we have a special assignment for you. The humans have requested a neutral party to witness their military operations in the Outer Rim." Jathic's skin flickered with curiosity, the blue patterns on his flesh shifting slightly. "The humans? The newcomers who joined the council only 70 cycles ago?" "The same," the council leader confirmed. "They are mounting an operation against the pirate coalition that has seized the mining stations in Sector 7. 3 species have already failed to retake those stations. The humans believe they can succeed." Another council member, a being of pure energy contained in a crystalline form, spoke up. "We have heard disturbing reports about human combat methods. We need someone to observe and document their approach to warfare. You are our most experienced observer." Jathic accepted the assignment without hesitation. He was a professional, and this was his duty. But privately, he wondered what made these humans so different. He had read the basic reports about their species. They came from a death world, a planet that seemed designed to kill its inhabitants. Heavy gravity, extreme weather, dangerous predators, and deadly diseases. Yet somehow humans had not just survived but thrived. The journey to human space took 3 days. Jathic spent the time reviewing everything the council had collected about humanity. The more he read, the more confused he became. Humans seemed to contradict themselves constantly. They were capable of great kindness and terrible violence. They created beautiful art and devastating weapons. They formed deep bonds with other species, but had spent most of their history fighting each other. Their military history was particularly puzzling. Humans had been fighting wars for their entire existence, thousands upon thousands of conflicts, each one teaching them new ways to kill and survive. Other species had outgrown warfare as they developed technology and wisdom. Humans had simply gotten better at it. When Jathic's ship arrived at Forward Operating Base Sentinel, he was struck by how different it looked from other military installations he had visited. Human bases were functional and efficient, but they also had something else. Banners hung in the corridors showing symbols and words he didn't understand. Memorial walls displayed names of fallen soldiers. Recreation areas where off-duty personnel gathered and laughed together. Commander Lisa Grant met him at the docking bay. She was a tall woman with dark skin and eyes that seemed to miss nothing. Her uniform was crisp and professional, decorated with ribbons and medals that Jathic didn't recognize. She offered her hand in the human greeting gesture, and Jathic carefully shook it, still getting used to the custom. "Welcome to Sentinel, Observer," she said. Her voice was firm but not unfriendly. "I hope your journey was comfortable." "It was adequate, Commander. I am eager to begin my observation duties." Grant nodded and gestured for him to follow. As they walked through the corridors, Jathic noticed how the human soldiers reacted to their commander. They snapped to attention, showed clear respect, but there was also something else. Trust, loyalty. These soldiers would follow this woman anywhere. "I'm assigning you to Bravo Company," Grant explained as they walked. "They're one of our best units. Captain Jake Morrison commands them. Good officer, good people. They'll take care of you." "Will I be in danger?" Jathic asked. Grant stopped and looked at him directly. "Observer, you asked to watch humans in combat. Combat is always dangerous. We'll do our best to keep you safe, but I can't make promises. If that's a problem, you can stay on the ship." Jathic's skin flickered with determination. "I will observe from wherever I can best perform my duties." "Good answer," Grant said with what might have been approval in her voice. They arrived at a large briefing room where dozens of Marines were gathered. They wore combat fatigues in various shades of gray and black. Some cleaned their weapons, others checked their armor. A few sat quietly, lost in thought. They all looked up when Grant entered, coming to attention immediately. "At ease," Grant said. "This is Observer Jathic from the Viridian Collective. He'll be accompanying you on the next operation. Treat him as you would any other member of the team. Captain Morrison, he's all yours." A man stepped forward from the group. Jake Morrison was younger than Jathic expected for a commander, perhaps 35 cycles in human years. He had short brown hair, sharp features, and the same intense focus Jathic had seen in Grant. He extended his hand, and Jathic shook it. "Welcome to Bravo Company, Observer. Morrison said. "We're glad to have you with us. Let me introduce you to the team." For the next hour, Jathic met Marines, sergeants and corporals, privates and specialists. Each one had their own personality, their own story. Corporal Danny Price was a joker who kept everyone laughing. Sergeant Amy Holland was serious and focused, constantly checking on her squad. Private Kevin Lane was young and nervous, clearly on his first deployment. Lieutenant Chris Baker was Morrison's second in command, a steady presence who spoke little but observed everything. What struck Jathic most was how they treated each other. These weren't just soldiers following orders. They were a family. They teased each other, supported each other, trusted each other with their lives. That evening, Morrison briefed the company on their mission. A holographic display showed the mining stations that had been captured by pirates. The stations were heavily defended, filled with automated weapons and enemy soldiers. The pirates had taken hostages, mostly civilian workers who had been unable to evacuate. 3 other species have tried to retake these stations, Morrison explained. The Krell attempted a siege. The pirates waited them out. The Cess then tried negotiations. The pirates killed the negotiators. The Vorash sent in combat drones. The pirates destroyed them and killed more hostages in response. He paused and looked at his Marines. Command has decided to try the direct approach. We're going in hard and fast. Drop pods straight to the largest station. Breach in multiple locations, clear deck by deck. We extract the hostages and eliminate the pirate threat. Jathic's translator struggled with some of the tactical terms, but the meaning was clear. The humans planned to assault a heavily fortified position directly. It seemed like madness. Any rational military force would look for an alternative. "Sir," one of the Marines asked, "what about casualties?" Morrison's expression hardened. "Medical estimates put casualties at 30 to 40%. But if we don't act, the hostages will die. The pirates have made that clear. We have our orders and we have our duty. We're going in." The room fell silent. 30 to 40% casualties meant 1 in 3 Marines might die or be seriously wounded. Jathic waited for protests for someone to question the plan. Instead, the Marines simply nodded and began preparing their equipment. Later that night, Jathic sat in the small quarters assigned to him, recording his initial observations. Human military culture appears to prioritize mission success over individual safety. Casualty projections that would cause other species to reconsider are accepted without question. Further observation required to understand this mindset. He looked at the schedule for the next day. The assault would begin at dawn, ship time. Jathic would observe from a command shuttle with full sensor access. He would finally see what made humans so different in combat. As he prepared for sleep, he heard voices in the corridor outside. Marines talking quietly, saying goodbye to friends just in case, making peace with the possibility of death. Jathic felt something he rarely experienced in his work. Fear. Not for himself, but for what he was about to witness. He had been told to watch humans in battle. Tomorrow he would see if the rumors were true. The command shuttle was cramped but functional, filled with display screens showing various camera feeds from the Marine's armor. Jathic sat in an observer seat, his 4 hands moving across the control panel as he activated his recording equipment. Commander Grant sat nearby, watching the same screens with practiced intensity. 5 minutes to drop, a voice announced over the communication system. On the main screen, Jathic could see the mining station growing larger. It was a massive structure, built to extract rare minerals from the moon below. Now it was a fortress, bristling with weapons and defended by some of the most dangerous pirates in the sector. The drop pods were simple in design. Each one carried 6 Marines in crash seats, protected by ablative armor and basic shields. They would fall from orbit, smash through the station's outer hull and deposit the Marines directly into combat. It was brutal and direct. It was very human. "Bravo Company, this is Morrison." The captain's voice came through clearly. "Remember your training. Watch your corners. Trust your squad. And bring everyone home. Hurrah!" The Marines responded as one, their battle cry echoing through the communication channel. Jathic watched as the drop pods launched, dozens of them falling toward the station like metal rain. The pirates responded immediately. Automated defense turrets opened fire. Missiles streaked through space. The void between the shuttle and the station filled with explosions and tracer rounds. The first pod exploded in a ball of flame. 6 Marines gone in an instant. Jathic's skin flickered with shock. The second pod lasted a few seconds longer before a missile tore it apart. Then a third pod was destroyed. 18 casualties before they even reached the target, Grant said quietly. Her face showed no emotion, but her hands gripped the armrests of her chair tightly. Acceptable losses, Jathik couldn't speak. Acceptable losses. 18 dead soldiers were acceptable. What kind of species thought this way? The remaining pods reached the station. They hit the hull with tremendous force, their armored tips punching through metal and creating breaches. The pods opened and Marines poured out, weapons ready. Jathik focused on the feed from Morrison's helmet camera. The captain was one of the first through the breach. The interior of the station was dark, lit only by emergency lights and the glow of the Marines' weapons. Shadows moved in the darkness, pirates waiting in ambush. The first burst of enemy fire caught a Marine in the chest. The man went down hard. Morrison didn't stop. He fired his rifle in controlled bursts, advancing steadily. His squad moved with him, covering angles, checking doorways, moving like parts of a single organism. Contact left, someone shouted. A Krell pirate, massive and armored, stepped into the corridor with a heavy plasma cannon. The weapon could have torn through the Marine's armor like paper. But Corporal Danny Price was faster. He threw himself forward, sliding on the smooth deck, and fired up at the pirate's weak points. The Krell went down and Price kept moving. Jathik noticed something strange. Price's armor showed damage. A plasma bolt had burned completely through the chest plate. The suit's medical system showed internal injuries, broken ribs, and partial lung damage. Price should have been on the ground, dying. Instead, he was still fighting, still moving forward. How is that Marine still conscious? Jathik asked Grant. Adrenaline, training, and pure stubbornness, Grant replied. Price is one of our best. He won't go down easy. Another screen showed Sergeant Amy Holland's squad fighting their way down a narrow corridor. The pirates had set up a killing zone, with automated turrets covering every approach. It was a perfect defensive position, impassable by any reasonable standard. Holland didn't stop to think about it. She gave orders quickly, her voice calm despite the chaos. Baker, Rogers, sprint right on my mark. Chen, Davis, you follow and take out those turrets. I'll keep them busy. Sarge, you can't stay in that corridor, one of her Marines protested. I can and I will. Ready, mark. 2 Marines broke from cover and ran. The turrets tracked them immediately, firing streams of energy. Holland stepped into the corridor, drawing their fire to herself. Her armor started taking hits. 1, 2, 3. Her shields failed. 4, 5, 6 hits. The armor began to crack, but her distraction worked. The other Marines reached the turrets and destroyed them from behind. The corridor was clear. Holland collapsed against the wall, her armor smoking and breached in multiple places. Medic, someone called. Negative. Holland's voice came through, strained but firm. Keep moving. I'm fine. She wasn't fine. Her medical readouts showed severe injuries, but she pushed herself up and kept fighting. Jathik watched in disbelief. This wasn't normal. This wasn't how soldiers behaved. The battle continued. Deck by deck, corridor by corridor, Bravo Company fought their way deeper into the station. The pirates fought back hard. They knew the terrain. They had superior positions. They outnumbered the Marines. None of it mattered. The humans just kept coming. Private Kevin Lane's feed showed his first real combat experience. He was terrified. That much was obvious from his elevated heart rate and rapid breathing. But he didn't freeze. He didn't run. When his squad sergeant went down with a leg injury, Lane took charge. He coordinated fire, called out targets, and led his fire team forward. Lieutenant Chris Baker's platoon encountered a sealed blast door. The pirates had locked it down, creating a choke point. Standard procedure would be to find another route or bring up heavy equipment. Baker's Marines placed breaching charges and blew the door open. They charged through before the smoke cleared, catching the defenders off guard. Jathik realized he was watching something he had never seen before. Human soldiers didn't fight like other species. Most galactic militaries treated combat as a problem to be solved with minimal risk. They used technology, tactics, and caution. Humans treated combat as an obstacle to be overcome through sheer determination. They're insane, Jathik muttered. They're Marines, Grant corrected. There's a difference. 4 hours into the battle, Bravo Company had cleared 3 decks. The casualty list was growing. 28 dead, 47 wounded. But the company kept fighting. The Marines who could still move kept pushing forward. Morrison's voice came through the command channel. All units, this is actual. The pirates are falling back to the central hub. We've got them on the run. Press the advantage. Don't give them time to regroup. Jathik watched as the tired, wounded Marines found new energy. They had been fighting for hours. They should have been exhausted. Instead, they moved faster, sensing victory. The pirate defense began to crumble. Small groups tried to surrender, but the main force retreated deeper into the station. The humans pursued relentlessly. They didn't stop to rest. They didn't pause to treat their wounded beyond basic first aid. They just kept moving forward. By the time the shift ended, Bravo Company controlled half the station. The pirates were trapped in the remaining sections, surrounded and cut off from escape. The hostages had been located, safe in a sealed compartment that the pirates hadn't been able to breach. Jathik reviewed the data in stunned silence. Bravo Company had taken heavy casualties just as predicted, but they had accomplished in hours what 3 other species had failed to do in weeks. The station was nearly retaken. The hostages were found. The pirate coalition was broken. That night, Jathik visited the medical bay. It was crowded with wounded Marines. Some would recover quickly. Others would need extensive treatment. A few would never fight again. But the mood wasn't what he expected. The Marines weren't defeated or demoralized. They talked and joked, checking on their friends, already asking when they could return to duty. He found Corporal Price in a medical pod, his chest wrapped in regeneration bandages. The Marine smiled when he saw the observer. "Hey, observer. How'd we do?" "You were shot through the chest," Jathik said. "You should have died. Yet you continued fighting for 3 more hours." Price shrugged, then winced at the movement. "Yeah, it hurt pretty bad. But my squad needed me. Couldn't let them down." "You value your squad over your own life?" "That's the job," Price said simply. "We take care of each other. That's what makes us strong." Jathik left the medical bay with more questions than answers. He returned to his quarters and began writing his report. His hands moved across the datapad slowly as he tried to find the right words. Human soldiers display pain tolerance beyond any known species. They continue fighting despite injuries that would incapacitate others. This is not due to superior biology but to mental conditioning and unit cohesion. Human Marines form powerful bonds with their squads. This loyalty overrides self-preservation instincts. He paused, then added one more line. The psychological impact of human aggression on enemy forces is significant. Pirates who have faced multiple species without fear retreated from human assault. Recommend further observation to understand full implications. Jathik saved the report and prepared for sleep. Tomorrow the battle would continue, and he would be there to watch. Jathik couldn't sleep. The images from the battle kept replaying in his mind. Marines charging through gunfire, soldiers fighting with holes burned through their armor. The casual way Commander Grant had said, acceptable losses, as if 18 dead Marines were just numbers on a report. He sat at his small desk and accessed the human database that Grant had given him access to. If he wanted to understand these warriors, he needed to learn about their history. What he found disturbed him more than the battle had. Humans had been fighting wars for their entire existence. Not occasional conflicts like most species, but constant, endless warfare. The database listed thousands of wars, battles, and conflicts. Some lasted for days, others dragged on for decades. And the scale of violence was staggering. One war, called the Second World War, had killed over 70 million humans. 70 million. Jathik's entire species numbered only 4 billion. Humans had lost more people in a single war than most species had in their entire history. And that was just one war among thousands. He read about ancient human warriors, Spartans who were trained from childhood to fight and die, Roman legions that conquered half their world through discipline and tactical brilliance, Mongol horsemen who built an empire through speed and ruthless efficiency, samurai who lived by codes of honor that demanded death over dishonor. Every culture, every civilization, every group of humans had their own warrior tradition. They celebrated soldiers in their art, their stories, their history. They built monuments to the dead. They wrote songs about battles. They passed down tales of heroism from generation to generation. Most species grew beyond warfare as they advanced. Humans had simply gotten better at it. A soft knock on his door interrupted his reading. Jathik opened it to find Private Kevin Lane standing in the corridor looking uncertain. "Sorry to bother you, Observer," Lane said. "I saw your light on. Thought you might want some company. First battles can be hard to process." Jathik invited him in. The young Marine sat down, moving carefully. He had taken a hit to his shoulder during the fighting. and while the medical systems had repaired most of the damage, he was still sore. "How are you coping?" Jothic asked. Lane thought about it for a moment. "Honestly, I'm scared. I've trained for years, but nothing really prepares you for the real thing. Seeing friends get hurt knowing you might die, it's a lot, yet you continue to fight." "Yeah," Lane said, "because someone has to. Those hostages need help. The pirates need to be stopped. And my squad needs me. I can't let them down." "Your species has fought so many wars," Jothic said, gesturing to his screen. "Do you ever want peace?" Lane looked at the historical records displayed on the screen and nodded slowly. "Of course we want peace. We dream about it, write about it, work toward it. But we've learned something important. Peace doesn't just happen. You have to be willing to fight for it. You have to be ready to defend it." "That seems contradictory." "Maybe," Lane admitted. "But that's humanity. We're full of contradictions. We can be gentle and violent, kind and cruel, peaceful and warlike. We're complicated." After Lane left, Jothic continued his research. He discovered something fascinating in the biological records. Humans were pursuit predators. On their homeworld, they had hunted by chasing prey for hours or even days. They weren't the fastest or strongest hunters, but they never stopped. They would track an animal until it collapsed from exhaustion. That same instinct drove them in warfare. They didn't just fight battles. They pursued victory with relentless determination. They would keep coming, keep fighting, keep pushing forward until either they won or they died. The next morning, Jothic joined Commander Grant for breakfast in the officers' mess. The commander looked tired but focused, probably having been up most of the night reviewing battle plans. "How are you holding up, Observer?" she asked. "I am processing what I witnessed," Jothic replied carefully. "I must admit, human combat doctrine is unlike anything I have studied." Grant smiled slightly. "You're being diplomatic. You think we're crazy?" "I think I do not understand your species yet." "That's fair," Grant said. She took a sip of her coffee, a human stimulant beverage. "Let me ask you something, Observer. How many people has your species lost to warfare in the last 1,000 cycles?" Jothic calculated quickly. "Perhaps 50,000 across all conflicts." "We lose more than that in a single major war," Grant said quietly. "Humanity has paid for peace with rivers of blood. Every person alive today is descended from survivors, warriors, refugees, people who endured the worst and kept going. That's in our genes now, that instinct to survive no matter what." She pointed to a memorial wall nearby, covered with names etched in metal. Every person on that wall believed in something bigger than themselves. They fought for their families, their countries, their ideals. Some fought for freedom. Others fought for justice. Some just fought to protect the person next to them. But they all chose to put their lives at risk. "Is that not a waste?" Jothic asked. "All those young lives ended before their time?" "Of course it is," Grant said. And for the first time, Jothic heard emotion in her voice. "Every single death is a tragedy. Every name on that wall represents someone who will never go home, never see their family again, never live the life they should have had. It's terrible and unfair and wrong. Then why do you continue?" "Because the alternative is worse," Grant said firmly. "If good people don't stand up to evil, then evil wins. If strong people don't protect the weak, then the weak suffer. We fight because someone has to. We die because that's the price of keeping others safe." Jothic was silent for a long moment. "You celebrate death." "No," Grant corrected him. "We celebrate sacrifice. We honor those who gave everything for something they believed in. There's a difference. We don't want people to die. We want them to live. But when death comes, we make sure it means something." Later that day, Jothic interviewed more Marines. Each one had a different reason for serving. Some came from military families and wanted to continue the tradition. Others wanted to see the galaxy. Some were escaping difficult lives. A few simply wanted to make a difference. But they all shared something in common. They believed in what they were doing. They trusted their squad mates. And they were willing to die for each other. Sergeant Amy Holland, still recovering from her injuries in the corridor battle, explained it best. "The person next to you isn't just a fellow soldier. They're your brother, your sister, your family. You train together, eat together, fight together. You know their stories, their dreams, their fears. When the shooting starts, you're not fighting for your country or your commander or even for yourself. You're fighting for them, for the person who has your back." Jothic began to understand. Human military strength didn't come from superior weapons or tactics. It came from the bonds between soldiers, from the certainty that your squad mates would never leave you behind, from the knowledge that you were part of something larger than yourself. That evening, the call came. Intelligence had located the pirate leadership in the central command station. It was the most heavily defended position, filled with traps and weapons. Taking it would require a direct assault through narrow corridors with overlapping fields of fire, and the pirates had scattered hostages throughout the station as human shields. Captain Morrison called a briefing. His Marines gathered, knowing what was coming. Morrison didn't sugarcoat the situation. "This is going to be the hardest fight yet," he said. "The pirates know we're coming. They've had time to prepare. Medical estimates casualties at 60% for the assault force. That's more than half of you." The room was silent. 60% casualties meant most of them wouldn't walk out of that station. Yet no one protested. No one suggested an alternative. They simply waited for their orders. "I'm asking for volunteers," Morrison continued. "Anyone who wants to sit this one out, no judgment. This is above and beyond." Every single Marine stepped forward. Morrison nodded, and Jothic saw something flicker across his face. Pride, sadness, determination. "I expected nothing less. We move in 6 hours. Get your gear ready. Tell your people you love them. And prepare to show these pirates what happens when they mess with humanity." The Marines dispersed to prepare. Jothic found himself standing alone with Morrison. "You're going to get them killed," Jothic said. "Most of them won't survive." "I know," Morrison said quietly. "Do you think that doesn't tear me apart? Every name, every face. I remember them all. But we have a job to do. Those hostages need us, and these Marines knew what they signed up for. How can you ask them to sacrifice themselves?" "I'm not asking," Morrison said. "They're volunteering. That's the difference. That's what makes us human. We choose to stand up. We choose to fight. We choose to protect others even when it costs us everything." He looked at Jothic directly. "Your species will never understand us. You see death as failure. We see it as the final service we can give. We don't want to die, but if we must, we'll make sure it counts for something." Jothic returned to his quarters and updated his report. His hands shook slightly as he wrote, "Humans possess a cultural framework that honors sacrifice above survival. This is reinforced through training, tradition, and social bonds. The result is a military force that will accept catastrophic casualties in pursuit of objectives." The assault on the central command station began exactly on schedule. Jothic watched from the command shuttle as Lieutenant Chris Baker's platoon approached the outer hull. The station's defenses opened fire immediately. Explosions lit up the darkness of space. 2 Marines were killed before they even reached the breach point. Baker's voice came through calm and steady. "Keep moving. Don't stop. Go, go, go." The platoon breached the hull and poured inside. The pirates were waiting. The first Marine through. The opening, a young woman named Corporal Jennifer Stone, took 3 hits immediately. Her shields failed. Her armor cracked. She should have gone down. Instead, she roared and charged forward. Her momentum carried her directly into the enemy position. She fired her rifle point blank, then switched to her sidearm when the rifle clicked empty. She was hit again and again, but she didn't stop. Her squad mates followed her charge, using her assault to break through the defensive line. Stone finally collapsed when the corridor was clear. Her vital signs were critical, but she had given her squad the opening they needed. "Medic!" someone called. "Negative." Stone's voice came through weakly. "Keep going. Mission first." Jothic watched the medical readouts in horror. Stone had been shot 7 times. She had multiple organ damage, severe blood loss, and her left arm was barely attached. She was dying. Yet her last words were about the mission. The medic, a Marine named Hannah Walsh, reached Stone and immediately began emergency treatment. Walsh worked with incredible speed and skill, stabilizing the worst injuries and sealing wounds. But even as she worked, she was exposed in the corridor, vulnerable to enemy fire. "Walsh, you need to move to cover," Baker ordered. "Not until she's stable, sir," Walsh replied, her hands moving steadily despite the danger. A pirate appeared at the far end of the corridor, weapon raised. Before he could fire, Sergeant Tyler Brooks threw himself in front of Walsh. The plasma bolt meant for the medic hit Brooks instead. He went down hard, but Walsh was safe. This was the pattern Jothic saw repeated throughout the station. Marines sacrificing themselves for each other. Soldiers taking hits meant for their squad mates. Medics staying in danger to save the wounded. It wasn't reckless. It was deliberate. They had all made the same calculation. The mission and their comrades were worth more than their individual lives. The battle descended into chaos. The pirates had turned the station into a maze of death traps. Automated turrets, explosive charges, hidden snipers. Every corridor was a killing ground. Every room was a potential ambush. The Marines adapted. When conventional tactics failed, they improvised. Private Nicole Ross jury-rigged explosives from mining charges stored in the station. She used them to blast through walls, creating new routes that bypassed the pirate defenses. Sergeant Brooks, despite his injuries, used a destroyed weapon mount as a battering ram to force open a sealed door. When his squad encountered an energy barrier they couldn't penetrate, Private Jason Cole noticed that the station's own power conduits ran near the barrier. He shot the conduits, causing an overload that brought the barrier down. Jothik realized he was watching something extraordinary. These humans weren't just following orders or executing plans. They were thinking, adapting, solving problems in real time under the most extreme conditions imaginable. How do they do this? He asked Commander Grant. Training helps, Grant replied, but mostly it's because they have to. Humans have always been problem solvers. When we encountered something that could kill us, we figured out how to kill it first. That instinct doesn't go away in combat. It gets stronger. The casualty reports continued to climb. 35 dead. 62 wounded. The numbers were approaching the medical estimates. But Bravo Company kept pushing forward, getting closer to the command center where the pirate leadership had made their final stand. Then Jothik saw something that made him question everything he knew about human biology. Private Jason Cole had been wounded earlier in the battle. A piece of shrapnel had penetrated his armor and collapsed one of his lungs. The medical systems had stabilized him, but he needed immediate evacuation to the ship's medical bay. Cole refused. "I can still fight," he insisted when the medics tried to evacuate him. "My squad needs me." "You have a collapsed lung," the medic argued. "You need surgery. Then patch me up and let me go. I'm not leaving my team." The medic did what she could, but Cole's medical readouts showed he was in severe pain, and his oxygen levels were dangerously low. Any rational person would have accepted evacuation. Cole rejoined his squad and continued fighting. Jothik pulled up Cole's file and found the explanation. Humans had an incredible capacity to function through pain and injury. Their adrenal response, the chemical reaction their bodies produced in dangerous situations, allowed them to ignore wounds that would incapacitate other species. Combined with their high pain tolerance and stubborn refusal to quit, humans could keep fighting long after they should have stopped. The assault reached its climax as Captain Morrison led the final push toward the command center. The pirates had concentrated their remaining forces there, determined to make their last stand. The corridor leading to the center was a nightmare. Overlapping fields of fire, explosive charges, and nowhere to take cover. Morrison didn't hesitate. "Baker, take your platoon left. Holland, you go right. I'll take the center. We hit them from 3 directions at once. They can't cover everything." "Sir, that center corridor is suicide," Holland protested. "I know," Morrison said calmly. "That's why I'm taking it. Your squads have a better chance on the flanks. Move out." Jothik watched as Morrison led a small team directly into the most dangerous approach. The captain was the first through the door. He was hit immediately, his shields flaring and failing under the concentrated fire. But he kept moving, laying down suppressive fire so his team could advance. On the left flank, Baker's platoon fought through a series of interconnected rooms. The pirates had trapped each room, turning them into kill boxes. But the Marines cleared them methodically using grenades, breaching charges, and sheer determination. Holland's squad on the right encountered the heaviest resistance. The pirates had positioned their best fighters there, knowing it was the most likely approach. The fighting was close and brutal, hand-to-hand combat in tight spaces where neither side could effectively use their weapons. But the 3-pronged assault worked. The pirates couldn't defend everywhere at once. Their lines began to crack. Small groups started to surrender, throwing down their weapons and raising their hands. Then Morrison reached the command center doors. The pirates had made their final defensive position there, placing hostages in the room as shields. Through the security feeds, Jothik could see civilians huddled together, terrified, surrounded by armed pirates. "We have hostages," Morrison reported. "I count 23 civilians. Pirates are using them as shields, requesting permission to engage." There was a pause. This was the nightmare scenario. Any attempt to breach the room could result in hostage deaths. But leaving the pirates in control meant the hostages would eventually be killed anyway. Commander Grant's voice came through. "You have authorization to engage. Minimize civilian casualties, but get those hostages out." "Copy that," Morrison said. He turned to his team. "We've trained for this, precision fire only. Identify your targets, watch your backgrounds, we're going in." What happened next demonstrated the peak of human military training. Morrison's team breached the door and entered the room with their weapons raised. The pirates opened fire, deliberately shooting near the hostages to discourage return fire. The Marines didn't hesitate. They threaded shots between hostages with incredible accuracy. Every trigger pull was calculated. Every round went exactly where intended. The pirates fell one by one, unable to use the hostages as effective shields against humans who had spent thousands of hours training for exactly this situation. In less than 30 seconds, the room was secure. 23 hostages safe. 12 pirates dead. Not a single civilian hit. The pirate coalition broke. Their leadership was dead. Their forces were scattered. Survivors threw down their weapons and surrendered. The battle was over. Bravo Company had taken devastating casualties. 48 dead. 73 wounded. Some would never fully recover. But they had accomplished their mission. The hostages were safe. The station was retaken. The pirates were defeated. Jothik sat in the command shuttle, staring at the casualty reports. Nearly half the company had been killed or wounded, just as predicted. But the humans had known this would happen. They had calculated the cost and paid it anyway. That evening, he visited the medical bay again. It was even more crowded than before. Hannah Walsh was still working, treating the wounded even though she had been hurt herself. She had a bandage on her shoulder where shrapnel had caught her, but she refused to rest. "How do you do it?" Jothik asked her. "How do you keep going? After seeing so much death?" Walsh looked up from the Marine she was treating. Her eyes were tired but determined. "Because they need me. Every person I save is someone who gets to go home. Every soldier I patch up is someone who can protect others. I became a medic to help people. The fact that it's dangerous doesn't change that." Jothik found Captain Morrison in a quiet corner of the ship, staring at a list of names on a datapad. The journey back to Viridian took 3 days. Jothik spent most of that time reviewing his recordings and preparing his final report. The images haunted him. Marines charging through gunfire, soldiers fighting with injuries that should have killed them. The casual acceptance of death in pursuit of victory. He had witnessed 6 weeks of human warfare. He had watched Bravo Company fight 3 major engagements and dozens of smaller skirmishes. He had seen humanity at its most violent and most compassionate. And he still wasn't sure he understood them. On his final night aboard the human ship, Commander Grant invited him to dinner. They sat in her private quarters, sharing a meal of simple food. Grant had insisted on cooking it herself, claiming that good food was one of the few pleasures available in military service. "So, observer," Grant said, pouring him a glass of water, "what will you tell the council about us?" "The truth," Jothik replied. "That humans are the most dangerous species I have ever studied." Grant smiled slightly. "I suppose that's fair. But dangerous to whom? Are we dangerous to our friends or our enemies?" "Both, perhaps," Jothik said honestly. "Your capacity for violence is matched only by your capacity for loyalty. You will fight to the death for your comrades, but you will also show mercy to defeated enemies. You honor sacrifice, but you also value life. You are full of contradictions." "That's humanity in a nutshell," Grant agreed. "We contain multitudes," as one of our poets once said. "We can be the best and the worst of all species, sometimes in the same day." She leaned back in her chair. "Let me tell you something, observer. Something that might help you understand us better. After the battle at the command station, Do you know what Captain Morrison did? Jarthik shook his head. He visited every wounded Marine personally. He spent hours in the medical bay talking to them, listening to their stories, making sure they knew they mattered. Then he went to the pirate prisoners and made sure they were being treated humanely. He ordered medical care for their wounded, food for the hungry, and fair treatment for all of them. Why? Jarthik asked. They were enemies. They killed his Marines. Because that's who we are, Grant said simply. We fight hard. We don't hold back in battle. But once the fighting is over, we extend mercy. Our enemies become prisoners, not victims. We follow rules of war that protect the wounded and the captured. We believe even our enemies deserve dignity. She paused, then continued. You've seen us at our worst, Observer. You've watched us kill and die. But you've also seen us at our best. You've seen courage, loyalty, sacrifice, and compassion. That's the complete picture of humanity. We're not monsters. We're just people who refuse to quit. When Jarthik arrived back on his homeworld, the Galactic Council assembled to hear his report. The Grand Chamber was filled with representatives from dozens of species, all eager to hear about human military capabilities. Jarthik stood before them and began his presentation. He showed footage from the battles, carefully edited to illustrate key points. He displayed casualty statistics, tactical analyses, and psychological profiles. The council members watched in silence. Some seemed disturbed by what they saw. Others appeared fascinated. All of them paid close attention. I have observed human military operations for 6 weeks, Jarthik said. In that time, I have witnessed capabilities that challenge our understanding of warfare. Humans do not fight like other species. They do not calculate acceptable risk in the same way we do. He brought up footage of Corporal Stone's charge into the pirate stronghold. This Marine took multiple hits that should have been fatal. Yet she continued fighting for several minutes, securing a crucial position for her squad. This is not an isolated incident. It is standard behavior for human soldiers. Are they immune to pain? One council member asked. No, Jarthik replied. They feel pain as much as any species, but their biology allows them to function through pain. Their adrenal response, combined with psychological conditioning, enables them to ignore injuries that would incapacitate others. He showed footage of the hostage rescue. Here we see precision that rivals any species in the galaxy. These Marines threaded shots between hostages and pirates with perfect accuracy, under extreme stress after hours of continuous combat. They trained constantly for scenarios exactly like this. But the casualties, another council member protested. They accepted losses that no rational military would tolerate. That is the key to understanding humans, Jarthik said. They do not define rationality the same way we do. To them, accepting high casualties to save innocent lives is completely rational. They have a cultural framework that honors sacrifice above survival. He paused, choosing his next words carefully. Humans come from what they call a death world. Their planet tried to kill them for millions of years. They survived through adaptation, innovation, and an absolute refusal to give up. That instinct is encoded in their genes. When faced with impossible odds, they do not surrender. They fight harder. The council chamber erupted in discussion. Representatives argued about what this meant for galactic security. Some saw humans as potential allies. Others viewed them as a threat. Everyone agreed that humanity was unlike any species they had encountered. The council leader called for silence. Observer Jarthik, you have studied many militaries. Where do humans rank in terms of combat effectiveness? Jarthik considered the question carefully. In terms of technology, humans are average. In terms of numbers, they are still a relatively small species. But in terms of determination, adaptability, and willingness to pay any price for victory, they have no equal. If humans were ever to become our enemies, I do not believe we could defeat them. The room fell silent. Not because of their weapons or ships, Jarthik continued, but because they will never stop fighting. You can destroy their fleets, invade their worlds, kill millions of them. They will keep coming. They will find a way. They always do. That is what makes them truly dangerous. A representative from the Krell hegemony spoke up. Surely this is an exaggeration. No species can be that formidable. I thought the same, Jarthik admitted. Then I watched a Marine named Jason Cole fight for 3 hours with a collapsed lung. I saw Sergeant Amy Holland draw fire to herself so her squad could advance, taking 7 hits before she fell. I witnessed Captain Morrison lead 48 Marines to their deaths to save 23 hostages, and I saw the pride in his eyes when he reported mission accomplished. He looked around the chamber. Humans are not invincible. They die as easily as any of us. But they die facing forward, weapons in hand, fighting to the last breath. And that is what makes them exceptional. The council debated for hours. Some wanted to limit human expansion. Others argued for closer cooperation. In the end, they reached a consensus. Humanity should become our ally, the council leader declared. We should foster close military cooperation, share technology, and integrate human forces into council operations. We need them on our side. The vote was unanimous. After the session ended, Jothik returned to his quarters and found a message waiting for him. It was from Commander Grant. She had sent a photo of Bravo Company taken after they had returned to base. The company was smaller now, gaps in the formation where the dead had once stood. But the survivors stood tall, proud of what they had accomplished. The message was simple. Thank you for bearing witness. We are glad someone was there to remember what they did. Jothik stared at the photo for a long time. He recognized faces now. Corporal Danny Price, recovered from his chest wound. Sergeant Amy Holland with new scars but the same determined expression. Lieutenant Chris Baker, steady and reliable as always. Captain Jake Morrison, carrying the weight of command and the memory of the fallen. And he understood something he hadn't before. These humans weren't fighting for glory or conquest. They were fighting because they believed it was right. They were protecting the weak, opposing the cruel, standing up for ideals that most species had long since abandoned as impractical. They were heroes, in the oldest and truest sense of the word. Jothik opened his personal journal and wrote one final entry. I was told to watch humans in battle. Now I wish I never went. Not because of what I saw, but because I can never unsee it. I know now what humanity is capable of. I know they will do whatever it takes, pay whatever price, sacrifice whatever is necessary to accomplish their mission. He paused, then added one more thought. If the galaxy ever faces an existential threat, we will not need to ask if humanity will help us. We will need to keep up with them as they charge forward, weapons ready, refusing to surrender even when defeat seems certain. That is their nature. That is their gift. That is both their glory and their curse. Weeks later, Jothik received another message. This one was from Private Kevin Lane, the young Marine he had spoken with during his first night on the base. Lane had been promoted to corporal and was now a squad leader himself. Hey, Observer, the message read. Just wanted to let you know that we made it through. Lost a lot of good people, but the ones who survived are stronger for it. We've been talking about you a lot, about how you watched us fight and didn't turn away. That took guts. You're honorary Bravo Company now. If you're ever back in human space, look us up. First drink is on me. Jothik smiled, a gesture he had learned from humans. He composed a response.